You've thought about it. Being an author. You are dead set on becoming a chartered accountant. After all, it will begin in CASA. But you also know that you can be a writer. You can write. You dream of that crisp new cover shining to the touch with your name on it. Timpum Pahlele, CASA. You know how nice that cover would look with your name and those 4 letters. You know. You would like to write a book someday as a CA, as a business leader. But how? Kong kong. There's a knock outside. Doubt is at the door. You think to yourself, who am I to write this? Where would I even begin? Caught between your ambition and your imposter. You wonder if the urge to write is calling or just wishful thinking. Today, we are joined by KC Rottok Chesaina, CASA SICA Top 35 Under 35 finalist in 2015, Chief IFRS Officer at Financial Minds, best-selling author and co-founder of CFO East Africa. We chat about how he became a published author and journalist through the CA designation, so you, someday, can too. We also chat about how he founded a Pan-African magazine, the pros and cons of self-publishing versus house publishing, how to get your writing published to the world, lessons in persistence to get what you desire in life, and more. I hope you enjoy. My travelers on the road to CASA. Woo! 2026. We are in, people. Quick one. Casey's books are really good. And they're actually also very relevant. If you want to be a CEO, if you want to be a CFO, positions that CAs frequent, then you'll love the books that he's written, Masters of Money, which is on JAC listed CFOs' experiences and their career lessons, and the CFO X Factor, which is the same except for CEOs. So check that out in the show notes, link there. With that, on to the episode. Welcome back, my people. This is the Road to CA podcast, the show for aspiring chartered accountants to inspire, empower, and inform the difference makers of tomorrow. Guys, today we are joined by a CA storyteller with a passion for financial reporting and leadership excellence. Yes, he is a CASA, but also has an MCom in accounting from Wits University. By the way, he's also, which is like probably a really cool thing that we have to chat about, a JSC accredited IFRS specialist. We will absolutely be chatting about that. He's the Chief IFRS Officer at Financial Minds, best-selling author of the CEO X Factor, co-founder of CFO East Africa, and a SICA Top 35 Under 35 finalist for 2015. He's also the author of his new book, Beyond the Beans, showcasing the stories and the expertise that we have as accountants beyond just counting the beans. He is the man with a plan behind the brands. We are joined by KC Rottok Chesaina. KC, how are you, man?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Thank you for having me on your wonderful platform. It's a pleasure to converse and learn from each other.
I did so much research into your background, and I think being a storyteller, I personally have so much to learn from you in this regard. Being someone who's been captured by this calling of showcasing stories. So I'm so excited, man. Before we even get going, we always do this at the beginning of the road to CA. We rewind. Let's go back to where CA began for you.
Yeah, so CA began for me not by choice. When I
Sure.
came to SA, I was coming here to study law, but I came from Kenya and they were like, no, we don't recognize. I came at the age of 20 because my mom was the Kenyan ambassador to South Africa way back
Sure.
before you were born, Alunga. And when I got here, I had already spent 2 years outside of high school, and I thought I'd go and slip right into a university, but none of the universities were taking me without a SACWA accreditation. And SACWA said, no, we don't think the Kenyan high school education is up to level. So I ended up enrolling at Damlin. They didn't have law, which I wanted, but I thought, okay, let me do a marketing degree because I thought by nature I'm into this. I'm an extrovert, and we probably need. I probably do well in a career that requires me to showcase brands and things like that. So I started in marketing, and while I was doing marketing, I did very well in the accounting modules, and the accounting lecturer pulled me aside and said, dude, you should consider becoming a chartered accountant, become a CA. If you become a CA in South Africa, the options, especially in this country, are plentiful, is what she said.
Mhm.
And then I was like, okay, cool. Maybe I should switch. I'll do it. My plan was never to. My degree at Damlin was never to become my career path because I always thought I'll afterwards do law. So I thought I was going to do marketing, then jump into law. What's the difference? I'll do accounting and then jump into law. And so
Sure.
when I finished my accounting degree, I was like, okay, I'm not going to do a whole other degree. So I went to WITS. I went for an interview. The prof at that time, Prof. Dixon, said, Damlin is a terrible degree. We are not up to scratch. But look, I'll give you a chance. You'll come in, you'll do the CTA, you'll definitely fail the first year. Then you can redo it. And then once you redo it, then maybe you will pass. Then I was like, no, I promise you, I am going to pass it first time. Then he was impressed by my determination and he said, look, the best thing I can do for you is to give you this third year curriculum. Here are the files, and go and study them so that when you come at the beginning of the year, you are kind of, you'll be able to follow what's going on. So I spent that November, December, January just studying third year WITS accounting. And when I came, I performed very well in my fourth year. I was one of the top students, and they were considering me for academic articles and so on. And yeah, and from there, the rest is history. I ended up as a CA in an audit firm, spent a couple of years as a partner at a medium-sized audit firm, and then I was like, I hate auditing, just it was killing my soul. And then I went out and did other things. I enjoyed IFRS accounting. I still do. I do a lot of training. I train people in IFRS and AI and interesting things other than auditing. So that was a path then I ended up following.
Sure. I mean, you've been you've been around the block in this whole space, but you've also been uh you've been a publisher, you've been a partner, you've been now you're a bit of a pundit. You've also been a
Mm.
poet. I saw in one of the podcasts that I saw from you back in school. You were into poetry. What
Yeah.
did you keep those passions throughout? Because obviously you only wrote your books quite recently. Did
Mm.
you throughout that whole process? I mean, it's an incredible story that 3 months is for me such a big takeaway, and I actually want to dive into that. But did you write throughout that period?
Yeah, so I've always been writing, and one thing I said, other than my mom being a diplomat, she was also a professor of literature at the local university. So writing and books and literature was always around us when I was growing up. And so, I think I was telling you before the podcast started that my mom, we didn't have a TV in the house. My mom believed that, there's no benefit to have a TV. And we used to end up reading and reading and reading books. And that's how I got into writing. And then when I went to high school, I was writing the high school play and all that. And then I wanted to be a writer, but my mom, who's a writer, told me, "Look, you're too. If you go into writing, it's great. You might build a name, but in Africa, writing doesn't pay." So she was really like, "Go and pursue a corporate career," like what many parents tell their kids. But that bug was still there. So when I pursued the accounting career, and then I used to soon after I came up with a magazine. It was called the Expatriate Magazine, which was talking about foreign professionals who are in SA, so about expatriates. And then I used to organize expatriate events, and then those events used to be attended by people who are not expatriates, people who are married to South Africans, and they're like, "Oh, why are you excluding us? Expatriate is so exclusionary." So I changed it and called it the African Professional Magazine. So I did maybe 36 editions of that magazine or something, quite a few. It's there. If you like go to issue.com, you'll find my old editions of the magazine, African Professional. Um, and then during COVID, uh, a magazine survives um, on advertising, and nobody was advertising during COVID. So, and they wouldn't advertise because you're not distributing a magazine. And then I was like, I've always wanted to write a book, and therefore, now's the chance. And I was like, seeing as the books that I write I work with basically CFOs. Let me write a book about CFOs because they're my clients, and they're the kind of people who give me business and so on. And therefore, I decided, great, I'll write a book about CFOs. And then I wrote Masters of Money, which was my first book. And once you write your first book and you're successful, your publisher will bug you to write another book. And that's when I wrote CEO X Factor. And then I lost my only brother, and I was like, okay, cool. As a tribute, I'll write his biography. Then I wrote that. And then I wrote Beyond the Beans last year. And I'm always writing. So now I'm writing my next book. And what I do is I have a website called fineminds.co.za, which is my financial minds magazine, where I feature write-ups on financial leaders, and then those write-ups will be eventually compiled into a book that now, from following Beyond the Beans, I now self-publish books because I've kind of understood the publishing process. Yeah.
Sure, sure. Firstly, man, my sincere condolences about your brother.
Oh, thanks.
I'm actually very curious as to how is how is writing about your brother, how is that process different from writing about other topics that you've written about? Like how is the feeling different? Like what do you go through when writing that versus what do you go through when writing, Masters of Money or CEO X Factor?
Yeah. So someone asked me a similar question, and I thought about it, and I hadn't applied my mind to it much, but I came to my response then was, when I write all the books, all the books are written from the head, but the
Mm,
book about my brother was written from the heart, right? Because that is very different. And the challenge that I had and the challenges that I experienced after the book came out were, I had to do justice to the book such that I would remove myself from my role as his brother and just try and write it from a journalist type of perspective, where even some things that he did that are not flattering, because I didn't
mm,
want people to buy this book and it's all, they read about him and then they're like, oh, okay, that's not the guy we remember, you know? So yeah, so I in many instances did that. Africans are very conservative, so me like writing about him, for example, and his romantic relationships, or a fight he had in a bar, people would be very like, why would you put that in? And I'm like, but that
mm,
was the life that he led. But Africans don't want to talk about such things. Um, they would rather just sweep everything under the carpet and pretend that people did not have flaws. Yet, we are coming into an environment where things like vulnerability are preached, things like authenticity are spoken about, being authentic and so on, which is kind of the mindset that I have. Like, I like to be authentic and to humanize things, like even when I interview leaders, one thing I'm always interested to know about them is what were their biggest failures and what they learned from them. Because
mm,
I don't think it's interesting if you um, interview someone, write about someone, and they come across as people who have it all together, yet nobody does. Everybody you talk to is a human being. That we all make mistakes. We all fall by the wayside at some point, and it's good to know that our leaders are also human, which then also takes away this, which is encouraging for people who also want to aspire to be leaders, to know like, oh, okay, if he could have all those flaws and still make it, then I'm sure I can. And I love like Bible stories,
mm.
from Old to New Testament. There's no people there who are perfect people. Moses was a stammerer. David, Solomon were like womanizers, murderers. They murdered people's husbands to get the wives. Saul was like a terrible dude. I think it's a thing of like, yeah, we are all flawed and we can all get redemption if we just apply ourselves to it. Yeah. So yeah,
I think the most the
go ahead.
most um the most valuable thing about that perspective is that we we chip away at what has been the case in social media, which is this problem that everything is perfect.
Mhm.
It's just not true. I think with
Mm.
filters and fantasy and fakery that you see on social media, we sort of think that, you know, we oversimplify things, and
Yeah.
especially people. Like we oversimplify it in politics. We're just oversimplifying, and I think when you put something into the ether like this that's authentic, we're chipping away, man. We're chipping away, which I appreciate that. I wanted to dive into that point that you made around the fact that you understand the publishing game, right? So I'm just thinking
Mm.
about an aspiring writer who's an aspiring CA, and they're like, okay, maybe in future I'd like to write a book.
Mm.
Should they go the self-publishing route, or should they go
Mm.
the house publishing route? And what are the pros and cons of the two? Obviously, you've got a huge engine that you've built through Financial Minds, but what would you say to that person?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And when I wrote my book, I'd written like it had 31 chapters eventually. I think I'd done 5 or 6 of them, and my plan was to self-publish. I was just not of the view. Well, I just didn't think that anyone would want to publish a book about CFOs because they're not perceived to be the most interesting people, you know.
Mm.
So when I just decided, I'm gonna write it and I'm gonna publish it. So I would encourage anyone, if you believe in your writing, also back yourself. Be prepared to pay someone to edit your book. In fact, editing now is so much easier because there's tools out there. You can use ChatGPT to proofread, edit GPT, you can use Grammarly and so on. You can use many things to edit your book. So even paying an editor is perhaps not very necessary, especially when you're starting out. But I spoke to a published author, Sunyati. She's written a few novels, and she was like, yeah, I'll introduce you to my publisher and let's see. So she introduced me to her publisher. I sent them my manuscript and they were keen to publish it. So I was then, great, I'll actually just go with a publisher because you have nothing to lose if you have an established publisher. Firstly, they'll give you an upfront on your royalties, which is great because it helps defray costs. There's costs involved, especially like mine, interviewing people and so on. So that was good. And then, yeah, as they say, there's zero risk, right? They're covering all the cost. They're doing all the legwork to get your books into stores and that kind of thing. So
Mm.
it was perfect for me. They also, Jonathan Ball, my publisher, has affiliation to like the Media 24 brands, the newspapers, and so on. So my book could be featured in the newspapers and so on. And that worked for me. Then when they agreed to do a second book, or rather, when we talked about a second book, the CEO X Factor, um, also working with them, even not just the one key thing also about a publisher is because they know the game. Even like the book title Masters of Money, we went between us, me and the team, to come up with that name, and it came out as such a great name and a catchy one, and helped sell
Mm.
the book even more. My initial titles was like South African Financial Leaders or something like that, which just sounds like a textbook and not a book someone wants to read. So
Yeah.
the experience I got from Masters of Money and CEO X Factor then enabled me to understand how to publish on my own. And the good thing with publishing on your own is that if you believe something will work and your publisher doesn't, you can go for it. Also, from a financial standpoint, you can be able to sell books and, get, I don't know, 70% return on each book that you sell, compared to when you use a publisher and they give you 15% of what is sold. Of course, there's a bit of a toss up, because if
Mm.
you're going to sell 1,000 books on your own and get 70%, you'll get 70 grand, right? But if your publisher manages to sell 10,000 copies of your book and gives you 15%, that will be 150,000, which is double the amount, and with much less work, to be fair. So
Mm.
there's no right or wrong answer. I would say, if I want to write a book, I'll start by believing in writing the book, speaking to as many people about it, about its viability, its place in the market, because you don't want to write a book that everybody's done and it doesn't, nobody's interested in buying it except maybe your friends and family, who will just buy it as support and never read it anyway. um, and then once you're convinced about the book idea, reach out to publishers. those who you can get hold of. And if you still believe in the project, look for a way to get it self-published. You can even get someone to invest in the book, to say, look, I have no money. I've written this book. I believe it can go somewhere. And maybe someone who has money might say, okay, cool, I'll invest in the book. I'll give you the, 30,000 that you need to print copies, and the the first 50,000 worth of sales will be mine, type thing, Yeah. So that would be my advice.
Sure. I feel this thread of just high agency, even in that whole idea of like, it's a pretty scary one of going and getting someone else to fund your book, about
Yeah.
approaching publishers. These are really big things, but I see this thread of high agency, and I even think about like some of the people that you've interviewed in these books, man. Like if I think about this is the book, if you've seen it like at exclusive books, but the CEO of Vodacom and of SARS, and Tetonyati, the chairman of ESCOM, and like that would have taken high agency just to get to talk to those people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where do you
No, you're
think that
right.
starts though?
Yeah, no, you are right. So I think it starts with persistence, and I've seen it with you. Like, you messaged me, and I was like, okay, cool, I'm busy. Let's talk, I don't know, 6 months from now. And then you make a note, I'm gonna come 6 months later, and I'll bug you. And are you going to come? Will we do it here? We can do it online. Just that persistence is very key. And it's a difficult thing for people who are on the road to CA and CAs
Mm,
as well, because most people who study accounting are, and one of the things I do is, as you mentioned, we have the CFO network or community that I run in 4 countries in East Africa. Um, and I did a survey with CFOs, and I asked them, are you an ambivert, extrovert, or an introvert? And 45% said introvert. There was about 30% of them who think they are somewhere between intro and extroverts. And then there's like 25% who will say they are extroverts. So majority are definitely not extroverted. But if you're looking to build your network, you'd need to be out there, right? You'd need to be persistent and really appreciate that there is really nothing to lose, because if I
mm,
ask, I could get a no and I could get a yes. If I don't ask, I'll definitely have a no, right? So best ask, because there's always that small chance
mm,
that you're going to get a yes, right? Because it's a
mm,
percentage game. If you ask 100 people, it's like the man on the street who's begging. He asks 100 people for money. 99 of them roll up their windows, but there's that one person who gives him something. But by asking, he finds the one, right? So it's the same with
mm.
like building your network. And there's someone who I had using an expression that no means next one, So it doesn't mean like it's done. Like, I ask you something, you say no, it means move to the next one, next one, next one, and eventually you get the one. So that's how I've built the network. Keep asking. There's so many people out there. If someone tells you no, it's just another person. You need to have a short memory and brush yourself off. Of course, rejection hurts.
Mm.
It's painful to be told no. It makes you question yourself and makes you feel like you're not worthy, but you should just keep going, because around the corner you get the one who then says, oh yeah, let's do it. So that's how, for example, with and then when you get a yes, make sure you do a great job with it, because
Sure.
that then um, enables you to get referrals. So when I interviewed the CFOs, I did my best with them. And therefore, the CFOs, when I said I'm writing a CEO book and asked Mr. CFO, introduce me to your CEO, they were very quick to do it. And they were like, oh, sure, no problem. KC, you did a beautiful write-up. So I will definitely just put in a word for you, and then you get a hold of the CEO. Yeah.
Sure. That point on doing a great job, I think that is a huge one. I think we sometimes get into this short-term mind, and in our short-term mindedness, that's just the way humans work. We think that networking is about also getting a response, or it's about gaining income through this network. Like, we want that immediate thing, right? We're so metrics driven, and so when you put an investment in, you need to get ROI,
Yeah.
and like, that's just not how, especially in the B2B level, execs level that you deal with. It's just not how it goes. It's so relational, and it's such a soft thing to navigate. And in fact, even around this though, to get into this networking topic, I people often say it's not about what you know, it's about who you know, right? But I always say, yes, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know, but it's also about who knows you. And that's a lot of what that warm introduction helps with. It's because
Yeah.
now there's this social proof that says Casey is not someone who is not worth at least that 5 minutes, that little introduction and whatnot. But if you were to speak to a student, right? What should a student, or even like a first year, second year trainee at an audit firm or wherever, what should they know about networking today, in your opinion, that they shouldn't learn tomorrow and then regret?
Yeah. About networking. Yeah.
Mm.
So,
To be continued in part 2. See you next week.